Good morning, all. I wanted to do a brief review of one of my favorite romantic movies, though in retrospect, having rewatched it recently, it's not a great movie, it's a good movie. It's somewhat flawed and a little bit predictable and cliched, but it's still a good movie, principally due to the stars' performances, which were all very good. And that is Hanover Street from 1979, written and directed by Peter Hyams, who's a very good director, who I mostly associate with movies like 2010, the year we made Contact, which is really a great sequel to 2001 that for some reason not a lot of people have seen or remember having seen, but really quite good. Um, this movie stars Harrison Ford, Lesley-Anne Down, and Christopher Plummer, principally, also Shane Rimmer and Michael Sachs, and in a very funny role, Richard Mazer, and Suzanne Burtish is also who most people remember from Allo Allo, a very funny British comedy, is in this as well. Um, it's a romance set during World War II in 1943, and Harrison Ford plays the captain of a B-25 Mitchell flying out of England. That's a technical mistake. The USAAF did not fly B-25s out of England during World War II. They did have B-25s in the European theater. Most of them, however, were assigned to the 15th Air Force, not the 8th Air Force, and they flew out of Italy. Um, while the type did serve in all of the theaters, they were not flown out of England. But that's just a small thing, and you can overlook that. Um, Anyway, he meets a beautiful nurse played by Lesley-Anne Down in Hanover Street, London, and they're having a game of chicken on a bus where, he kind of tricks her into getting on, and then she says, "Oh, the baby's coming," and he jumps off, and then he pretends he has a limp in his left leg, and she feels guilty and jumps off, and then he jumps back up on the car. He doesn't have a limp. Anyway, they end up having coffee or rather tea together, and he's obviously rather instantly attracted to her, but she's sort of rebuffing him a little bit at the beginning, though she's being a bit flirtatious as well. Won't tell him her name or anything. He says, "I'd like to see you again. I get off again next Thursday. I'll have another day off, and I'll meet you right here." And she says, "I won't be here." And, he says, "I'll wait here all day." And, they sort of leave it there. They go back, they fly a mission, and Richard Mazer, who is the bombardier and nose gunner, is being really funny. The model of B-25 that they were using was the B-25J, which was in fact introduced in 1943, and that's when this movie takes place. So that's historically accurate. What isn't is a couple of things on the mission. Principally, that although they do face flak, they do not face any fighter opposition, and that's completely unrealistic, particularly if they're going into occupied France. There were many, many forward fighter bases, and they would have faced very fierce fighter competition, not just flak. So I think that was done simply to save on special effects. They could show explosions, and that wasn't really that difficult to, mat in explosions, but it would have been hard to show fighters because you would have actually had to have some at least mock-ups of BF-109s or FW-190s, which would have flown up to meet them. So that's, again, small technical glitch, but that's okay. You can rub it off in the story. One thing that comes out is that during the briefing, Harrison Ford is kind of wising off, and the wing commander, played by Shane Rimmer, is kind of pissed off at him for making, wisecracks while he's trying to give them the briefing, and kind of dresses him down a bit. Then, it's the next Thursday, and he does go back to Hanover Street. He's just standing on the corner waiting for Lesley-Anne Down to show up, and, she doesn't show up for a long time, and finally it's starting to get towards evening, and he's just about to leave, and of course she shows up, at the last minute. And they again have, tea, and he's complimenting her and telling her, he thinks he loves her and all this, and she won't tell him anything about, who she is. And again, they show, them going off on another mission and the routine life of the bomber crew, and then they also show them going to like a USO dance, and Ford is being a little, standoffish. He won't dance with anybody because, he's kind of fallen for Lesley-Anne down. She's not there, and they kind of use him as a foil for Richard Mazer is dating a girl, but she won't go out with him unless he fixes up her girlfriend. So he's going to fob her off on Harrison Ford, and he sort of pretends to go along. That's kind of a funny scene. And then you see more of the relationship developing between Harrison Ford and Lesley-Anne Down, and they eventually, make love. And even after that point, she won't tell him what her name is. And finally, they take a drive in the country, and she tells him her name is Margaret, and that she has feelings for him. But he obviously missed, and it's very visible. She's got a wedding ring, and it's not unnoticeable. It's silver, not gold, but you can still notice. And they show some of her domestic life as well. She has a young daughter, and her husband, who is played by Christopher Plummer, is sort of a rather nice English gentleman. He is, as it turns out, an intelligence officer, and that plays into what happens next. He is supposed to be training agents of what is either, they don't really say, but it's either MI5 or the SOE are being intercepted rather quickly in England. Two of them have been discovered and killed within like 2 weeks on two separate missions. So they think there's a traitor. There's a double agent somewhere in the agency. One of the people who was killed said that he had discovered in Gestapo headquarters in Lyon, which is in fact where Gestapo headquarters was, a list of double agents, and he had not been able to photograph it before he was killed. And it's in a safe. He said it's in a locked safe, and says what the safe type is. So Christopher Plummer goes to a safe cracker and says, how do you get into this safe, and tells him which one it is. He said, oh, that's easy. It's just, you just need a lock pick. It's a lock safe, not a combination safe. And he shows him the ways to pick the lock. And he tells this to the agent who he's training to do this mission. Now, for reasons that are kind of murky, but it becomes obvious when later, but Christopher Plummer decides he's going to do the mission personally. He's not going to send this agent. He's going to do it himself. That probably would not have been permitted, but it adds an interesting twist to the plot. So now Harrison Ford's bomber is assigned to take them in because they don't want to drop them from a British plane. They don't want it to be obvious that this is a British intelligence operation. So they're going to use an American bomber and parachute him in, I should say. Well, they meet, fierce flak competition over the target area, and the plane is basically destroyed. Everybody's killed, including a rather frightening scene, though you don't actually see it, where Richard Mazer is killed, and Harrison Ford says, Chimino, and he goes to see him and says, my God, he's got no face. He's got no face. So obviously the flak shell blew up the whole bombardier position, and his face was torn off, and that could quite easily have happened. Flak shells were quite large. I think they were 37 millimeter, or 88 millimeter rather, I should say, and that's an enormous shell. Could do quite a lot of damage to people and equipment. So they parachute out. They have to parachute out now, both of them, and the plane is burning and it's going to explode, and it does after they parachute out. And they land in, occupied France. And Harrison Ford estimates they're 20 miles south of Lyon, so they have to go north. And he's going to go on his way and let Christopher Plummer go his way, and instead he ends up having to help him because he says he trips over a root and breaks his ankle. He says, "You're not very used to doing this, are you? You don't know which way north is, and you tripped within 5 seconds." And he says, "No, to tell you honestly, I'm not used to doing this." But he slowly reveals as they're walking along that he's doing this to basically prove he's a brave person to his wife. He says something kind of interesting to Harrison Ford. And he says, you're a hero. You're the kind of person who, if a little boy slips through the ice and is drowning, you'll plunge right in and get him and rescue. And, I'm the guy who gives you his coat to, keep him warm. So in the end, you'll get the accolades and people will thank you and you'll be famous. And all I've got is a wet coat. And that is kind of an interesting self-assessment on Christopher Plummer's part. He feels like he's too polite, he's too nice, he never does anything brave. And he wants to prove to his wife, Lesley-Anne Down, who he loves very much, that he's not a coward, that he's not a paper tiger, as it were. So they end up, they go on this dangerous trek, and they eventually make it to this little farm that's run by Suzanne Burtish, who is a member of the Free French. She's a member of the resistance, but she warns them that her father is a collaborator, and he has a German staff car that they've given him, a Kubelwagen, they call it. And they take the Kubelwagen and drive into Lyon and go to the SS headquarters. The building that they use is the real building, by the way. I thought that was good, authenticity in there. But there is another mistake in this, and that is when they get into they successfully enter because they're dressed as SS officers. And the clerk addresses Christopher Plummer, who is dressed as an SS colonel, as Oberst, and that's incorrect. Oberst was a Wehrmacht and Luftwaffe name for colonel, but the SS had their own rank designations. He would have been addressed as Standartenführer. That's colonel in the SS. So that's a technical mistake. But anyway, they get in and they go in to put papers in. This is a clever ploy. They're going to put papers in from a general, and it's a real general, it's the name that they use. And they put them in the safe so they can see how the safe operates, basically. And they do that, and they put the papers in, and they see that they've changed it. It's no longer a lock safe; it's a combination safe. And Plummer's going, well, I don't know what to do now. I don't know how to get into the. I can't crack the combination safe, and they figure out a ploy. They go back. They leave. They go back later, and he demands to have the papers back out because he wants to see that they were the correct papers. And they're giving him a little bit of lip. And one of the things that Harrison Ford had said, how am I going to do this? I don't speak any German. And Plummer had told him, just don't speak to anybody. You're supposed to be my sergeant. You're supposed to be, sort of submissive, and it doesn't matter if, nobody's going to listen to you anyway. So he does that. He avoids speaking to anybody, but eventually when they go back with this ploy about that Plummer wants to see the papers to make sure they're the correct papers they put in. That way he can get into the safe, obviously. So the class staff clerk is giving him a little bit of flack. You had orders that said you were allowed to put the papers in. You didn't have any orders that said you were allowed to take them out. And he's given, you have to get authorization. He's going, where am I going to get authorization at this time? He's like dressing him down, and trying to basically browbeat him into doing this. And it's starting to work. And then one of the clerks in there is talking to Harrison Ford, whispering to him. And he laughs, and Harrison Ford laughs along with him. He offers him a cigarette, and he takes the cigarette and smokes, and then he tells him another joke, apparently, and laughs, and Ford laughs. And he says something else, and Ford laughs, and he looks at him like, why are you laughing at that? So rather to conceal the fact that he doesn't speak any German, he decks him, and then they have to get out, and eventually Plummer finds the correct file, and he has his little Minox spy camera. That's accurate. I liked that. And takes his photographs of the documents, and so he's got the list now. And but one of the guards, another troop of guards comes in, and they see the guy who's knocked out. And Harrison Ford sets him up in a chair, so he's facing the opposite way, and puts a cigarette in his hand. He's still unconscious, but they don't know that. And they're yelling at him, Gefreiter, Colonel, or Gefreiter was not a private, but a sergeant, I think. And it says, they keep calling him, and he doesn't answer. They turn around, they see he's knocked out, and then they hit the alarm. And so now they have to escape, and they have a very narrow escape, and they're being chased through the street on Harrison Ford finds a German motorcycle and takes off on it. And they're being chased by one of these motorcycles with a sidecar, and they're firing a machine gun at them, but they miss. And to be honest, it is hard to hit a moving target. But they missed a little bit too much. But that's again, movie logic, not logic. Um, and they managed to through a series of harrowing adventures get to the farm where the girl had put them up. And unknown to them, her father overhears them, and he calls the Germans in, and they have to do a very quick escape. They set the barn on fire, and they again escape on the motorcycle that they found, and they're being chased by 5 or 6 vehicles, and yeah, in a rather unrealistic way, they manage to escape. They crawl across this bridge, and they're being fired at, but the Free French are on the other side of the bridge, and they're shooting back at the Germans, and they kind of put them off. At one point, it looks like Christopher Plummer's going to fall to his death, and he tells Harrison Ford, "Tell my wife I died a brave man." He says, "Tell her yourself," and pulls him up, and they manage to escape. I think, though, Christopher Plummer has been hit and by machine gun fire. And he says, "See, all I've got is the wet coat again." And he says, "No." Ford says, "No, this time you get the girl." And he says, "You're not going to die on me." Well, the next thing you see is they're back in England, and Christopher Plummer has been taken to hospital. He's going to survive, and his wounds, and his wife, Lesley-Anne Down, is coming to see him, and she gets the phone call that he's okay, and tells her daughter that he's okay. Daughter is played by Patsy Kensit, by the way, who is now a really good English actress. And Harrison Ford comes in too, because of course he was the pilot who was of the plane that dropped him into occupied France, and he was injured slightly too, but he's not seriously injured. He comes and he meets Lesley-Anne Down and hugs her and tells her, I love you enough to let you go. And, we have to, this is ridiculous. We have to end this now. You have to go to him. And, does the right thing. But he also says to her something. He says, nobody should have eyes that color. Lesley-Anne Down's eyes are kind of a pale, almost grayish green, very beautiful eyes. So it's, appropriate that he says that. And that's, the movie ends. Again, soundtrack by John Barry, who also did the soundtrack to Somewhere in Time and many, many, many James Bond movies as well, and a lot of other things. So there are some similarities between those two movies. Again, very nice romantic movie. My friend George liked this movie so much, he was going to build a B-25J model kit and paint it as Gorgeous Georgianne, which was the plane in the movie. There was only one actual flying B-25, which was that one. The rest were mock-ups, but they were pretty good. I mean, they're for the time, they were very well made. I thought you can't really tell in some of the scenes, like the scene where they're taxiing on the runway for takeoff. Only the first plane in position is real, and the rest of them were mock-ups. But again, very well done. I thought very well shot. Some really good cinematography in the movie. Again, it's a little silly. It's a little improbable. But again, one of the reviewers said it was obviously supposed to be a romantic movie with a war background, and it comes off more as a war movie with a romance background. I think maybe that's an accurate assessment of the movie, but it's still good, and I do recommend it.